I play a lot of games, like more than 3. Many of these games are widely considered dead, deceased, dearly departed, one with the earth, playing possum but not actually playing because there's literally no oxygen in the brain. But how can I play a game if that game is supposedly in a permanent slumber? And what exactly constitutes a dead game in the first place? I wanted answers, and instead of using the internet like an idiot, I did some soul-searching in the woods during a full moon, and in addition to poison ivy, this is what I got from it. Single-player games, in theory, can never die. They are the immortal jellyfish of the gaming world, though there are exceptions. Some live service games can turn into unalived service games when their servers are shut down based on low profits or new projects. But in general, if you can boot up a game and get from beginning to end without highly technical modding, it very much has blood in its veins and a song in its heart. Where things get extremely messy is in the multiplayer realm. Now, some games have single-player and multiplayer, like Battlefield Bad Company 2, also known as the greatest video game ever released in March of 2010, with the possible exception of Ben 10 Alien Force Viljack's Attacks. In these games, at a certain point, you'll be inevitably cut off from half of the experience. I can still boot up Bad Company 2 and listen to the unrivaled banter during the campaign, but the online experience will never be resurrected. And when an experience is gone for good, that's when emotions become not good. One of the most devastating moments in my long and fruitful life was in April of 2014. I fully committed to PlayStation Move, just like tens of gamers around the world. I went out and bought Resistance 2 and Resistance 3 Doomsday Edition with included sharpshooter controller. When I got home, I played around 45 minutes of Resistance 2 online, getting a taste of the breathtaking 256-player battles. Then a few days later, I tried Resistance 3 online, only to discover that the servers had been permanently shut down. This crushing blow left a lasting mark on my heart. I've never finished either game, even though the story modes are fully intact and my PS3 works as well as ever. I just felt like I missed the bus, and I was forced to take a taxi that was just a wheelbarrow pushed by a 90-year-old man. I don't know if I would call the entire franchise dead, but it has indubitably been irrevocably debilitated. And not to brag, but I only needed to use thesaurus.com for one of those words. Just about every game has a ticking clock. Some last decades, some last a couple days. Online games that fully rely on a heavily populated player base to pay the bills put themselves in a tricky situation. Popularity becomes the end-all, be-all, and unfortunately, some subgenres like games that involve weaponized teleportation don't have the staying power of, say, games that let you play as Billie Eilish. Like a seasonal carton of milk, developers stamp an expiration date on any game that depends on the fleeting whims of popular opinion. It's not just aging graphics and outdated game mechanics, it's also an amalgam of very specific changes. If Heckriser's Deux hadn't expanded their server capacity, they would have been in an especially unique pickle. Much like a nightclub that is over capacity, it may seem like the ultimate party inside until you get in there and realize there's only enough room to tap your heels 3 times and pretend you're somewhere else. There are certainly worse problems than not having enough seating for all 8 million of your patrons, like only having wobbly tables and ripped tablecloths or running out of smoked salmon right when I was about to order. But beyond these issues, there is a bigger consideration. There's a critical window of time that has grown ever smaller with the steady increase in internet speeds and computer power. At one point, I would patiently wait 5 minutes or more to connect to a game mode of my choosing, but now if it stretches past 60 seconds, I'm ready to start throwing things. Sometimes when playing the finals, a supposedly dead game, I click on one game mode, change my mind, and hit cancel, but it is no longer an option because it already found a server and started connecting me to a game. But even games that don't depend on servers and instead piggyback on a host player can be considered dead in the face of a drastic change. When a game reaches an immaculate peak, like BattleBit Remastered pulling in a quick 80,000 players, the more typical player count becomes embarrassing by comparison. This impossible standard betrays the once glorious number and turns into evidence of a game that has passed its prime. These are all under the assumption that a game is still being supported, but what about when a developer is no longer pushing out updates? The game is still functional, but nothing new outside of the modding community will ever be released. Is that the sign of a game's soul moving on to the great pixel paradise in the sky? Or, like Modern Warfare 2, can it still live on longer than the average US senator? If you ask me, the criterion for a game that is as dead as a dented door in a dumpster in the desert is very clear. A game that is playable has a heartbeat. A game that supports a match and has enough players for a full match is very much alive. We don't get infinite sources of genuine happiness in this world, so if there's a blissful experience at our disposal that allows us to share the experience with other like-minded goofballs, why would we not capitalize on it? Splitgate has an average of 200 players, and I could not care any less. If I want to jump through a portal and get murdered, I'm gonna do it, gosh darn it. A game is officially dead when the very last player logs off. Until then, it may look like a raccoon that fell in a blender, but if someone still believes in it, it's still got a chance. Even if it should have been in the ground a long time ago. What? When do you consider a game to be decomposing in the backyard? What's one game you would revive if you could? Why are there so many varieties of Pringles all of a sudden? Answer my questions!